Cut off all this connective tissue. They're gonna eat all this. How often do you eat steak for breakfast, bro?
I think Will's gonna have like a panic attack looking at all that fat. Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome back to Abby's Kitchen. Today we're going to be revisiting one of the most contentious MDs on the internet, Paul Saladino. Now I've already made a full video on Paul before when he identified as Carnivore MD. And if you're like, what the is the difference between carnivore and now animal-based? We are going to get into that in a minute. But before we dive into this approach and what fellow content creator Will Tennyson thinks about it when he was brought along on a full day of eating this way, do not forget to check out my description for my free hunger crushing combo and protein 101 ebooks. And don't forget to smash that subscribe button for some more evidence-based nutrition content. Okay, let me hop in here quick to tell you about my sponsor today, MIDI Health. So I am getting close to 40 now, and a lot of my friends are actually approaching or actually in perimenopause, and they're struggling to get the support that they need to feel their best. And MIDI is specifically for this population. It's an insurance-covered virtual care clinic on a mission to bring compassionate, high-quality medical care to women in perimenopause and menopause. They offer science-backed 360 solutions from hormonal and non-hormonal medications to supplements to lifestyle coaching. It is completely personalized to your needs, and it can be done in the comfort of your home. You can also message, email, or phone them anytime between your appointments. And their clients have had some amazing outcomes. 94% have reported an improvement in hot flashes, 93% improved their insomnia, and 92% reduced feelings of anxiety and depression within 3 months. It's also covered by major insurance plans in all 50 states. And on my call, I feel like I learned so much about preparing my body for perimenopause with getting the right nutrition and lifestyle changes in play. So we really were talking about the decline in testosterone that happens in your 30s and the importance of things like strength training and certain nutrients like vitamin D, omega-3, and DHEA to support my body as I head towards my 40s. And very important takeaway, but she told me how important orgasms are. So yeah, love that. So if you want to learn more about MIDI Health, definitely check the link below to book your first appointment today. Okay, let's dive in.
An animal-based diet is centered around consuming the most optimal foods for humans. According to followers, that's meat, organ, fruit, honey, and raw dairy. It's essentially like carnivore without the scurvy.
We love a non-scurvy inducing diet, but also that doesn't necessarily mean it's risk-free. So according to Paul, there are further specs that his allowed foods have to hit. So it's gotta be grass-fed or pasture-raised meat, raw local honey, wild-caught fish, and corn and soy-free eggs. You also can have fruits, but only sweet, low-fiber fruits like mango and watermelon, because apparently anything with fiber is defined as toxic. Like, I have a headache from eye rolling so hard from this.
The reason I started that was because of my eczema. And I just got kind of fed up. So I did my own sort of ultra elimination diet of just meat, which is very extreme. And it really helped the eczema.
So this is what I call like a lazy elimination diet. It's like, you know, I don't want to do the work of figuring out the actual specific culprit, so I'm just going to eat as few things as humanly possible. And honestly, while most people are born into circumstances that make them more or less susceptible to things like eczema, each individual person will have their own set of unique triggers. Sometimes those are environmental and sometimes their diet. And the range of potential food triggers is huge, from more obvious triggers like dairy, soy, eggs, and gluten, to random things like broccoli, grapes, cinnamon, and even certain nuts. If Paul had worked with a dietitian here, like with a professional colleague of his, he likely could have identified the 1 or 2 or maybe 3 foods that cause a flare and saved himself the legit risk of nutritional deficiency by eating only meat for like 1.5 years.
I call this turf and turf. It's a 16-ounce T-bone and a 24-ounce porterhouse.
But yes, let's see what he now eats.
So you eat like a full watermelon a day?
I probably end up drinking the juice of a full watermelon a day.
Wow. But people say fruit, sugar. Fruit is the same as table sugar. What do you say about that?
Not at all, no way. There is not a single study giving someone fruit or fruit juice that shows endothelial dysfunction or inflammation. I used to fear fruit, and then I was like, oh man, I was so wrong.
Eat your fruit.
So Paul is 100% correct.
It's about damn time.
The research linking fruit juice to disease is far less sinister than what the low carbers would make you think. And more importantly, whole fruit is absolutely not the same as table sugar and really should never be feared or shunned. Table sugar is what I call a naked carb. It's fast energy that elicits a blood sugar and an insulin spike and fall because the carbs are just kind of like out there exposed. These are ultimately known as free sugars because they're kind of like free of that fiber. Now, whole fruit contains natural sugars, yes, but those sugars are bound up with fiber and also a ton of nutrition. That sugar then takes longer to be digested and absorbed, which helps to stabilize blood sugars and promote longer lasting satiety. But while juice does have like way more nutrition than, let's say, a soda, it also has its beneficial fibers removed, which is why the WHO classifies juice as a free sugar, aka naked carbs, because again, the sugars are free of fiber. So health authorities generally recommend reducing free sugar consumption to ideally less than 5 to 10% of total calories. So that's around 25 to 50 grams on a 2,000 calorie diet day. And while there is some research showing that drinking small amounts of fruit juice is associated with lower risk of heart disease and stroke, we see these benefits at like modest serving sizes where it's not displacing other important fiber-rich foods in the day. So like literally just over like a half cup in a day. Paul is consuming the juice of a full low fiber watermelon a day. That's probably almost 300 grams of sugar. So juice is of course nutritious, and some juice may be beneficial as a source of convenient nutrition, especially for folks who find eating produce unenjoyable. But it has to be weighed against the risk of tooth decay for one, and overconsumption when we largely drink our calories versus eat them with the fiber intact.
Look at the color of that strawberry.
Yeah, you just put the saturation all the way up on that.
I mean,
Oh my God.
looks like eggs, but it's actually a grilled plantain.
I just want to swallow that thing whole.
Yeah, I put a little butter in there
A lot of butter.
You were super
a lot
worried
of butter behind the scenes. Man.
No, bro, it was
Yeah.
good for you. But it was raw butter, local, raw kefir. This is goat's milk. This is local honey.
Okay.
So like it's all in the same jar because I just put it in glass.
As completely out of reach and expensive as I can imagine this meal right here would be, it's actually really, really well balanced. Like we got protein in the steak, healthy fats in the avocado, plus lots of fiber in the plantain, strawberries, and avocado as well. Now, the only thing that I would want to flag here is this obsession in the animal-based world with raw dairy, which I have spoken ad nauseum about right here. But what we found when we looked at the research, predominantly done on raw milk, is that A, it is a major source of foodborne illness, and B, it's not all better for your gut. Interestingly, with fermented dairy specifically, these risks and benefits are a little bit different. At least in the rat models that we have, where raw kefir did have more beneficial Lactococcus lacti strains of bacteria. And this makes sense since fermentation can actually destroy at least some of the harmful bacteria in dairy. And fermented dairy is also already a legit source of probiotics, whereas raw milk is not. So while raw fermented dairy is still riskier than anything that's been pasteurized, which is why we still tell pregnant people, children, and the immunocompromised to avoid raw cheeses, for example, it is far less risky and has a few more potential benefits than raw unpasteurized milk. So that's definitely where I draw the line.
So what's your opinions on vegan diets?
Bad idea.
I'm putting you in the hospital.
Yeah, nutrient deficiency. I just think it's extremely hard, potentially impossible, to get everything you need to be an optimal human without eating animal food. And you can take a million supplements, I know a lot of prominent vegans do, and still not get everything that you're missing in meat.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. You know, we live in a world of abundance, right? Where, we have infinite opportunity to make choices that feel good to us and still be healthy. Like, It's called supplements, Polly, and really all vegans should be supplementing with at least vitamin B12 and possibly also iron, D, calcium, and zinc. It is really not a huge burden to take like a teeny tiny inexpensive B12 supplement every day, especially in light of countless well-documented health benefits to plant-based eating. Now, if you contrast this with the other end of the spectrum where you're eating a diet rich in animal fats, like you can't even compare these two in terms of their risk-benefit profile. And also, there's kind of an opportunity to meet in the middle as well. But please go ask 100 nutrition professionals and scholars if we had to pick between fully animal-based and fully plant-based, and we're always going with the latter.
We become slaves to convenience, right?
We do. That's so true.
Slave to convenience. If it's not easy, I'm not doing it.
Okay, Paul, I don't know if you have kids. I have 2 kids. I have a husband, I've got 2 businesses, and I got Poppy. I can't just jet off to Costa Rica, home juice all my fruit, and whip up 3 meals and snacks from scratch every single day. So yes, sometimes I do grocery delivery, or I buy the pre-chopped fruit, or I order takeout. I know. And I encourage other people to find the convenient shortcuts that make healthy, balanced eating accessible to them. So can we just cut the elitist attitude here and perhaps share some tips that are more attainable to, 99.999% of the general population? Convenience doesn't have to be a dirty word.
Found it, Chief.
I love this, man. I just started doing this recently. You don't have to do this, but it's kind of fun and satisfying.
All right, so there's no soap in here, right?
Just use baking soda.
What do you mean just use baking soda?
I hate hand soap.
I probably wouldn't put grinding meat on my top 5 favorite pastimes list, but you do you. As for the soap, this one is a little more concerning to me. Like, I'm a dietitian, I'm not a public health expert, but I don't even let my kids come in the house without washing their hands, never mind after grinding raw meat. And this is a doctor here, folks. Like, one study showed that baking soda was actually the least effective home cleaning solution for killing Listeria, E. coli, and Salmonella. So yeah, with all due respect, sir, I would not shake those hands.
I think people just can't get over the fact that I'm suggesting that vegetables are maybe not great for all humans. You can eat your vegetables if you like them, but if you don't like them, or you have gut issues, or you have autoimmune issues,
Try cutting them out.
try cutting them out and see how you feel.
I can't get over it because this advice is very dangerous in the hands of the masses. So Paul says here to eat your vegetables if you like them, but his website actually has a list of pretty much every vegetable on the bullshit list, and the toxic list is also predominantly veg. And one of the supposed reasons for all this veggie hate is the alleged anti-nutrients like lectins found in plant-based foods like vegetables, legumes, and grains. Now, the concern is that the anti-nutrients in plant foods prevent nutrient absorption, increase leaky gut or intestinal permeability, and also apparently cause weight gain by mimicking insulin, along with other very weak claims. Now, I covered this in my video on Dr. Gundy's plant paradox, so definitely watch that video for an in-depth explainer. But in short, a lot of the anti-vegetable rhetoric is based on truly abhorrent research where they took rat fat cells and soaked them in lectins in a petri dish and then watched their insulin sensitivity decline. Well, we're not rats, and we also don't soak our fat cells in lectins. Like, there's actually no evidence that lectins that we consume can even get into our fat cells. And while lectins and other anti-nutrients can cause digestive distress in excess and can hinder the absorption of iron, calcium, phosphorus, and zinc, we can drastically inactivate these lectin levels by like 94 to 99.8% just by soaking and or cooking them. Which, I don't know, that's kind of how most of us like to eat our beans and wheat anyway. Like, please do not eat raw kidney beans. But as for the gut issues, cutting out all vegetables and other sources of fiber because you have gut issues is really like putting a band-aid over a bullet hole. Not only is this not going to solve the root problem, but long term, it's going to make that problem much, much worse. Yes, you will be removing all the FODMAPs, which are fermentable carbohydrates that feed the gut bacteria, so you will temporarily feel relief and feel better, but without any fiber, you're going to be starving the good bacteria in your gut, contributing to long-term dysbiosis. And this is why when we look at animal-based diets that are very, very low in fiber, they're associated with a high bacteroid to low firmicute ratio that increases the risk of colonic disease. So it is really like a balancing act here. And if you do have gut issues and are sensitive to FODMAPs, you would want to figure out exactly which FODMAP sources are a trigger and manage your FODMAP load while loading up on lower FODMAP fruits and veg like carrots, potatoes, eggplants, and green beans.
We got grass-fed beef burgers, we mixed in some heart, got some raw feta cheese that I got for you at the market this morning, cut up some mango, some cucumber, that's a fruit with a little lime on there to spice it up. And these are pasture-raised eggs from the farmer's market.
Okay, for dinner, we've got a fairly well-balanced meal, minus the lack of fiber, but looks good.
What would you say is your biggest piece of advice for somebody who's watching this, who doesn't eat like this but wants to start?
You don't have to be perfect. What you invest in your food intentionally pays back with interest.
You know what? I actually do agree with Paul on this sentiment. Our definitions, though, of like investing in your food may be different, but I do think that striving for perfection can be a really common pitfall for folks on their wellness journey. It's definitely one that I fell into myself, and I spoke a lot more about that in my video right here. But when we bind ourselves to these unachievable high standards and we get into this all or nothing mentality, there is a real good chance that we will eventually kind of have a little whoopsie moment and then completely throw in the towel. Starting to make small changes that you can easily integrate into your life is really the key to sustainable long-term habits. So for me, investing in my food looks like having a regular meal and snack schedule, prioritizing protein and fiber at most, if not all meals, eating more plants and less meat, ironically, and also allowing myself to eat the foods that I love judgment-free. Clearly, Paul and I have different opinions on what foods are best for us, and that is totally fine. While a lot of his claims are largely not based in the best evidence, I do respect our differences, and what works for me might not work for him and vice versa. That said, I do want to emphasize that a lot of these messages really should not be spread to the masses, especially by an MD. Because number one, this animal-based diet is still a highly restricted diet. Like any lifestyle that has this many rules, restricts your eating to specific food groups, and calls foods toxic, all red flags for me. Number two, a lot of Paul's recommendations come from a very privileged position. Like, can you imagine your doctor telling you that the only healthy diet has pasture-raised eggs, grass-fed butter and meat, and local honey? Like a block of basic butter from Walmart is already like $7 where I live. And it would cost me $20 for a single grass-fed steak. So it does feel quite elitist to position your diet as the best when it is really only attainable to a very, 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 very small group of people. And lastly, I obviously have some food safety concerns with like the raw milk situation and the lack of hand washing. I'm not this guy's mother, but I will gently remind everyone to please use hand soap after handling raw meat. Like I just really hope that Will had an emergency bar somewhere in his bag. But on that note, that is everything that I have for you guys today. Reminder to please be kind in the comments, but I would love your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I will see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!